Hello, and welcome to another look with Christian King. Today, I am back for the first time in a long time to do my UFC 228 preview show. I'm looking forward to these fights. As all the fans know, we've had quite a few weeks off, and then we had the Gaethje vs. Vick fight card the other weekend, which was very enjoyable. I've been busy, I opted not to do a show for that. I just didn't feel like there was enough big fights on there, but I really enjoyed the main event. I'm a big Gaethje fan. I was happy to see him pick up the win without taking a lot of damage as he usually does. But right now, we've got big fights coming up this weekend, and I'm here to talk about them. So we're going to dive right into this, as usual. I'm going to give my pick, followed by looking at the odds for the first time. So I do not know the odds to any of these. And as always, I'm going to skip over certain fights that I just don't feel like I have enough to say about. And one thing I want to do a little better job of this time is I want to make sure I'm saying what weight class these are in, because I just tend to not say that because I know, but not everyone just knows that right away. So let's dive right into this. The first fight up on, so the preliminary card, the early preliminary card starts on UFC Fight Pass at 6 p.m. Eastern Time, and it opens up with Frank Camacho, who's a very fun fighter to watch, versus Geoff Neal, who I'm not super familiar with. I'm not going to pick a winner in this fight, but I'm sure it'll be fun. And by the way, that is let's see, I believe that's going to be a welterweight fight. But yeah, I think Frank's fought at lightweight too before. I think that'll be a welterweight fight though. Ryan Benoit versus Roberto Sanchez. That'll be a flyweight fight. And so 125 pounds. And I'm not going to pick a winner in that fight either. I'm sure it'll be fun. Most flyweight fights are. Next up, we have Irene Aldana versus Lucy Pudilova, I believe is how you say that. I am also not going to pick this fight either. And I'm not a huge fan of watching Irene Aldana fight. Her style just frustrates me. So then we go to Jim Miller versus Alex White. Okay, so Alex White is not a particularly great fighter. He had a fight recently. It might have been his last fight with James Krause, and Krause easily coasted through that fight, and Alex White did really not much in that fight. So Alex White is not a terrible fighter by any stretch. He did beat Mitch Clark recently, before that losing to Tony Martin, and of course he beat the greatest of all time, Artem Lobov. The problem with this is I don't really know where Jim Miller's at. He's been quickly finished in some fights, but then he's also had fights where he still looks pretty good. He is on a pretty bad losing streak, but he did win a unanimous decision over Thiago Alves back in 2016, the end of 2016. He lost a decision to Poirier and Pettis, both of them. It's nothing to be ashamed of, but he hung in there the distance. He hung in there the distance with Francisco Trinaldo. My gut would tell me that Jim Miller can win this fight by decision, but I'm just really not sure where he's at. I'm actually not going to make an official pick for that one. Next up, the headliner for the early prelims on UFC Fight Pass, we have the veteran Diego Sanchez, the last remaining Ultimate Fighter 1 contestant, not alive, but still actively competing. Diego Sanchez versus Craig White. Craig White has had one UFC fight. He was called up from Cage Warriors, I believe, yes, and he lost to Neil Magny, who is a top 10 welterweight, so that's a hard fight. And he lost that fight back in May, TKO strikes, and now he's coming back. This fight to me is very simple. Diego Sanchez is way too small to be a welterweight. He is a lightweight. He's too big to be a featherweight, and he's not even a particularly huge lightweight in today's era. Craig White is 6'2", and he is a big boy. He's a big welterweight, and at this point in their careers, Craig White simply hits a lot harder than Diego Sanchez. He's a lot stronger than Diego Sanchez, and he also is still durable. Diego Sanchez does not have any of his durability left. Craig White is going to win this fight in the first round by KO or TKO, and it's going to make me a little bit sad because I love Diego Sanchez, but that's what's going to happen because that's how it goes when you keep fighting past the point where you have durability and you're taking on someone much younger than you, and you're also in a weight class that you don't belong in. That's what happens. So Craig White will win this fight by KO TKO in round 1. And let's look at the odds for that one, since that's the first one I'm actually picking. And I will go ahead and also tell you the odds for that Alex White Jim Miller fight. Alex White is the favorite, which I don't really see why. We won't even care that much about the numbers. So the Craig White-Diego Sanchez fight. Craig White can be found at minus 228 would be the best favorite odds you could get him at. And you can get Diego Sanchez as high as plus 206. Those odds seem fine to me. They could be a little closer. They could be a little wider. I really wouldn't care. Next fight on the card is the opening bout on the FX, not Fox Sports 1, on FX. 8 p.m. Eastern Time preliminary card. John Dodson is taking on Jimmy Rivera. So what do I think about this fight? So John Dodson recently re-signed with the UFC, if I'm not mistaken. Yes, after winning a split decision over Pedro Munoz. And Jimmy Rivera is coming off of a brutal knockout loss to Marlon Moraes. And the one thing I will say is Jimmy Rivera didn't really go out cold, but he definitely got messed up pretty bad. And he's coming back fast. Let's see how long ago that fight was real quick. That knockout loss to Marlon, which that fight lasted only 31 seconds, was June 1st. Okay, for me, that would mean that he's basically only had 3 months, if I'm doing the math right. That's not enough time off after that. I don't like that choice at all by his team. I don't like that choice by his coaches, and I don't like that choice by himself. However, John Dodson, at this point in his career, is a relatively tame opponent. He used to be a lot more aggressive, a lot more thirsty for the knockout, and he really just kind of has a little bit of a counter-punching. He doesn't seem to really throw as much as he used to. He's just, I don't feel like he's in there for the kill, which makes me a lot less worried about Jimmy Rivera's brain and the damage he took in his last fight. I'll cut to the chase. I'm going to take Rivera to win this fight by unanimous decision because I believe at this point in their careers, he is the better fighter. I do worry about his decision to come back so quickly. That makes me very concerned, and I would like to see what the odds and how the odds are and how they reflect that. By the way, this is a bantamweight fight, if I did not make that clear. So we're going to look at the odds. I'm taking Jimmy Rivera by unanimous decision, but I'm very worried about the head trauma he took in his last fight only 3 months ago. Okay, so Jimmy Rivera versus John Dodson. Jimmy Rivera is the favorite. You can get him at minus 132. That'd be the best odds to get him at. And John Dodson, you can get him as high as plus 118. So the odds are close. I like that because I feel like the odds would be wider if Jimmy Rivera had not been knocked out brutally in his last fight. So I think the odds makers are taking that into account. I'm still going to take Rivera by unanimous decision, but I am definitely worried about the prospect of him taking a big shot and not handling as well as he has in the past after the trauma from the last fight. Next up, after that, we have a man whose name is very difficult to pronounce. His name is Abdul Razak Al-Hassan. We're going to call him ARA for the rest of this conversation because that's a mouthful. He's taking on Nico Price. Nico Price is a crazy person. He is a very odd, unorthodox fighter. He has very large hands and long arms, which gives him very good natural power. He has a naturally good chin. He can take a heck of a shot. I believe he's 12-1. I believe his only loss was a submission, and I want to say, yes, I'm checking right now, it was versus Vincent Luque, who is a very good prospect in my mind, big fan of his, and he lost by submission after taking a lot of brutal leg kicks and just overall not having a very good fight. But since then, he's had almost all of his wins are by stoppage. He's knocked out Alan Jouban, he submitted George Sullivan, and most impressively lately, he knocked out Randy Brown. He knocked him out cold, and if you remember, it was while he was on his back with hammer fists. One of the oddest, craziest knockouts, but it was not a bad stoppage like you might think if you heard that. Randy Brown was out cold. He was out cold. Very impressive. Nico Price has a ton of power from very odd angles. He might not be the more technical of these two. ARA might be the more technical fighter. But I'm going to pick Nico Price to win this fight by KO or TKO in the second round. I'm going to do that because I think that I just feel like this fight is going to get heated. They both like to strike. I think that there's going to be some rough exchanges, and I just feel like Nico Price is really able to hang in there in the fire. I feel like he gets better the crazier the fight goes. And I think out of the two of them, I think he has, I mean, they both are hard hitters, but I think Nico Price has more natural power. I'm going to pick him to win this fight. I just am. I don't feel super confident about it. It's definitely, just picking him by round 2, KO, TKO. Not super confident about it, but that's my pick. I'm going to stick with it. This is a welterweight fight, by the way, 170 pounds. Let's look at the odds. Nico Price is the underdog at, you can get him as high as plus 133, and ARA, you can get him as low as minus 147 as the favorite. I guess that's fine odds. I'd maybe even say a little bit closer, but whatever. Next up, there's a light heavyweight or middleweight, I don't even know, and frankly, I don't care, fight between Charles Byrd and Darren Stewart. Don't care about that fight. Next on the card is the headliner for the FX prelims, and it is Aljamain Sterling taking on Cody Stamann. So what do I have to say about this? So both guys, very similar experience. They both have 18 fights. They both have had a lot of experience on their regional scenes before coming into the big leagues. Aljo is 15-3, and Cody Stamann is 17-1. And let's look back at some of Aljo's recent fights. Let's go back through his UFC run a little bit. Okay, he had some wins against people who aren't super well known. His first big win that got my attention was his choke over Johnny Eduardo. They have it listed as a guillotine, but I'm pretty sure it was a head and arm choke from the bottom, if I'm not mistaken. Brian Caraway beat him. He lost his split decision to Brian Caraway. I agreed with that. He definitely lost that fight. He also lost the split decision to Rafael Assunção in his next fight after that, which I also agreed with. And the reason I'm saying that is because Aljo thinks he won both those fights, or at least definitely the Rafael Assunção one, and I totally disagree. He then won a unanimous decision over Augusto Mendez. I was not incredibly impressed with that fight. However, after that, he won a unanimous decision against Renan Barão. Now, granted, this is a very washed version of Renan Barão, who is not the same as he used to be, but I still found that win to be relatively impressive. He then got knocked out brutally in the first minute or two by Marlon Moraes. And after that, he came back and won a unanimous decision over Brett Johns, who I think is a tough and gritty fighter, but I do not think has the skills to compete at the very highest level. So Cody Stamann, on the other hand, let's see. Since he has been in the UFC, he defeated Terrion Ware by unanimous decision, Tom Duquesnoy by split decision, which I thought should have been unanimous, and then he beat Brian Caraway by split decision, which I agreed with. Cody Stamann, in my mind, when you compare these two fighters, these two bantamweight fighters, I think that Cody Stamann is more sure of what he wants to do in a fight. And I think that, just to go ahead and spoil it, I'm going to pick Cody Stamann to win this fight. And I'm actually going to say split decision because I think it's going to be a close fight. But I do think he's going to win. It might end up being unanimous, but when I say split decision, even if the cards aren't split, most importantly, what I mean is that it's going to be close. It's not going to be 30-27. Aljamain Sterling, I do not like his striking. He has a good kicking game, but I do not feel that he does well when he gets in close range. And Cody Stamann is a fire hydrant. He's a stout, short, strong, throws powerful hooks. I think that'll give Aljamain Sterling trouble when they're in close. And they're both very good wrestlers, so I don't think that Aljamain will be able to just fall back on his grappling. I think that Cody Stamann has too strong of a base and too much awareness to be submitted by Aljamain Sterling. So that kind of just leaves me with, can Aljamain really win a decision by throwing kicks? Because I don't really know what else he's going to do very well against Cody Stamann. I think Cody Stamann's going to be able to land the better shots here. I think if anyone gets kind of rinse and repeat takedowns, I might even favor him to do that over Aljo. I'm not sure. I'm not really going to know exactly what's going to happen in this fight until I watch it, obviously. But my gut tells me Cody Stamann is going to take this one home. So I'm picking him, like I said, by split decision or close unanimous, whatever. But I think he's going to win a decision. Let's look at the odds. Cody Stamann is a slight underdog, as high as plus 113, and Aljamain Sterling is a slight favorite, as high or low, or however you say it, as minus 127. I'm not sure if I agree with those odds, but they are close, so I can't be too upset, and there's an underdog pick for y'all. Next up, we come to the main card, which is a pay-per-view, obviously. And we go to the featherweight division. The much anticipated return. Not that he's been out that long, but everyone's been waiting for him to fight again since that Kyle Bochniak fight. Zabit Magomedsharipov is coming back, and he's taking on short notice replacement Brandon Davis. They have a common opponent in Kyle Bochniak. Kyle Bochniak fought Brandon Davis like a very cautious outfighter and won a decision, and then realizing that he was out-techniqued against Zabit, Kyle proceeded to fight like a maniac and would have won that fight possibly if it had been a 5-round fight, because he had definitely tired Zabit out with his pressure and he was showing no signs of slowing down. But this is only a 3-round fight, and Brandon Davis does not have the horsepower or the pressure of Kyle, or at least that Kyle showed in that particular fight. Brandon Davis, he has a great game for the regional scene and against lower level opponents because he has slick striking, okay takedown defense that appears to be much better than it is until he faces elite competition. And he hits hard enough to knock out guys who don't anticipate the shots properly and brace for them properly, but he doesn't really have power at the UFC level, in my opinion. So I don't really think Brandon Davis has any avenues of victory here. He is not going to be able to out-grapple Zabit under any circumstances. I do not think he will be able to outstrike Zabit. Even if he lands some shots on Zabit, I don't think he has the power to hurt him. So I'm pretty much just think that leaves him. I'm sure in his mind he's going to win the fight, but in my mind he's showing up for a paycheck because I don't think he has any way of winning this fight. I would not pick him. I would not bet. Even if someone gave me great odds, I would not bet on him. I do not think he has any chance of winning this fight. I am absolutely picking Zabit to win this fight. I think that Brandon Davis is very tough. He's very hard to finish, but I do think Zabit can submit him. Zabit seems to like to kind of slow cook his opponents and then really look for the finish later on. So I am taking Zabit Magomedsharipov by round 3 submission. Let's look at the odds. Zabit, I'm sure, is the favorite. I haven't even looked yet, and I'm already going to say it. Zabit is the favorite. Let's see. Okay, Zabit, there's not odds for this fight on here, possibly because it was a short notice replacement. That is a problem. I would really like to find y'all some odds for this one, but it doesn't look like they're on here, so I'm just going to tell you, take my word for it, Zabit is absolutely going to be a huge favorite. Davis will be a huge underdog, and there's really nothing to bet on there. Unless you just want to spend a bunch of money to make a tiny bit of money, and then you can bet on Zabit. But I don't really like betting on big favorites, and that's definitely what he's going to be. So without the odds here to look at, let's move on to the next fight, which is a women's strawweight battle between Carla Esparza and Tatiana Suarez. So Carla Esparza has a lot more experience. Tatiana Suarez has a lot more natural gifts and athleticism. Essentially, these two women have a very similar game and style that they like to employ, but Tatiana Suarez is much larger, much more naturally gifted, and way more athletic and strong. So that leaves me picking her. It's very simple. Carla Esparza looked incredible in her last fight against Claudia Gadelha. I didn't think she had a chance, and she, in my opinion, actually might have squeaked that fight out. However, she lost a decision. Was it split or unanimous? I don't remember. I'm going to check. It was split decision. Before that, she beat Cynthia Calvillo in a pretty bad fight, in my opinion, but good job for her as a veteran. Tatiana Suarez has been just ripping through girls. She's been submitting them. She's been dominating them. She's been getting 30-26 scorecards. She submitted Alexa Grasso with ease in her last showing. She's a beast. She's incredibly strong. She has very long arms. She has excellent grappling, and I think she's just going to be too much physically for the veteran in Carla Esparza. That leaves me picking her. It's very simple. I just can't pick against her in this fight. However, Carla Esparza is so tough. I don't think she's going to get she's definitely not going to get TKO'd or KO'd by Suarez. That's not Suarez's style, and I'm not sure if Suarez can submit her. I think Suarez will dominate the position but be unable to get the submission, and I think that we will end up with a Suarez unanimous decision scorecard. Let's look at the odds. Okay. Carla Esparza is a huge underdog, which she always seems to be in her fights, at plus 458. And Tatiana Suarez is a huge favorite. The best odds you could get Tatiana Suarez at would be minus 531, which is insane. But she is as low in some places as minus 715. That's crazy. But I don't really disagree with it. It just might be a little too wide considering that MMA is a crazy sport and someone could literally. The problem with when you make odds this big, let me just go into a little rant here. When you make odds that wide, here's the problem. Maybe not everyone understands this. Let's say that I'm fighting John, and John is a terrible fighter, and I am an amazing fighter in this made-up scenario, and I am a 15-1 favorite. Well, if I throw a kick and then I step my foot back and I roll my ankle, and my ankle is now damaged and I can't stand up, and when my opponent tells me to stand up, I try and stand up and my leg buckles and I fall back down, that's a TKO loss. That will be considered a TKO loss via injury. And in that made-up scenario, I just lost, even though I was a 15-1 favorite. So you see the problem with that? When you make these odds wide, you are kind of tempting fate when you make them that wide, because anything can happen in an MMA fight. In a boxing fight, someone's not very likely to twist their ankle and lose by TKO injury because they're wearing shoes and they're boxing. They're not throwing kicks. But when you throw a kick and it gets blocked, or you hit the bone and it gives you kind of just a numb sensation, and then you go to plant your foot and your ankle gives out, you can lose a fight literally just by hurting yourself. So that's why I don't like to see odds too crazy, because you just never know. But, at the end of the day, obviously that is kind of a freak circumstance. I've just seen it so many times as a fan. I've seen so many guys get injured in a fight. I've seen a lot of fights that ended in TKO injury. So whenever odds are that crazy, you got to be careful there. Definitely got to be careful there. So we are going to go from one women's strawweight fight to another. And both of these are honestly two of the fights that I'm most excited about on this night. So good for them. I am super into these fights. I love that they put them back to back. We have Jessica Andrade, the number one contender in my mind, taking on Karolina Kowalkiewicz. I probably didn't say that last name perfectly. I always call her KK. So we've got Jessica Andrade taking on KK. Big fan of KK, but she just doesn't have the horsepower, in my opinion, to contend with Andrade. Andrade ragdolled Claudia Gadelha, who ragdolled KK. Now, MMA math doesn't always work, but I think it's pretty obvious that Jessica Andrade is going to have a huge power advantage and a huge wrestling advantage. So, how can Karolina win this fight? Well, she would have to have gotten way better at her footwork than the last time I watched her fight to completely avoid ever getting backed up into the fence or ever ending up in the clinch. And she would have to essentially just win this fight with straight punches down the middle, in my opinion. I don't think she'll be able to do that because I don't think she hits hard enough to scare Jessica Andrade off. So I think Jessica Andrade will just bulldoze through whatever KK has to offer and pick her up, slam her, hit her, ground and pound her, just basically dominate her. But I think that KK is so tough that even if the scorecards are 30-25 or 30-24, I don't think she's going to get finished. So I think we're going to have another decision in a row. I think both these fights are going to be lopsided, both these women's strawweight fights. I think this is going to be a lopsided win for Andrade, but all four competitors in these two fights are also tough that I just don't really see anyone getting finished. And also, too, the chances of a finish go down, of course, when you go to a lower division because people don't hit as hard when they weigh 115 pounds as they do when they're 265 pounds at heavyweight. So, yeah, I've got Andrade winning a dominant unanimous decision. Let's look at the odds. Jessica Andrade is a huge favorite, as high as minus 450, but the best odds if you want to bet would be minus 403, and KK is as high as plus 363. Big underdog, like I said. Straight punches, great footwork. Maybe she can win this fight, but I don't think she has enough of that, and I don't think she's just, she's tough. She likes to mix it up. She likes to get in the pocket and throw, and I think anytime you're within grabbing distance of Jessica Andrade, you're liable to get picked up and slammed, and that's probably what's going to happen multiple times. But I do think KK will hang in there and be able to avoid getting finished unless Jessica really decides to go for a submission, which is not usually what she prefers to do once she has people down. She just likes to ground and pound. But yeah, I've got her winning a unanimous decision, and as you can see with the odds, I'm not the only one who thinks that. So next, we're going to move on to the most lopsided fight on this entire card, another women's fight. We've got Valentina Shevchenko taking on Nico Montano. Now, technically, I should have said it the other way around because Nico Montano is the champion of flyweight, which feels weird to even say out loud because she is a 4-2 fighter who, frankly, does not impress me at all in any way. She beat Roxanne Modafferi, who is a lovely person and a very amazing story of someone who's traveled the world and fought all over, but she is not an elite athlete by any stretch of the imagination. And Nico had a competitive fight with her to win the title. If Sijara Eubanks had not been hospitalized with a bad weight cut and able to compete, Sijara Eubanks would be the women's flyweight champion. So in my mind, Nico Montano really only won the belt because she fought a late notice replacement in Roxanne Modafferi. I'm sorry, and I have the utmost respect for anyone who competes in the UFC. Good for Nico Montano, but she is not even in the same ballpark of athlete, competitor, or fighter as Valentina Shevchenko, who is an absolute monster. Valentina Shevchenko spent years fighting at 135, where she was outsized, and now she's fighting at her natural weight class of women's flyweight, and she looks beastly. At 125 pounds, she's an absolute monster. Her striking is impeccable. She has shown very good grappling skills, especially when she's not fighting people who are so much bigger than her. She really seems to be going for takedowns and ground and pound, looking for submissions. Very impressed with her game. Big fan of hers. I think she's just going to absolutely dominate this fight. No questions asked. And I think she's going to look to put a statement out. I think she's really realized, you can tell she's kind of picked up her interviews. I feel like she's way more engaged and all. I just feel like she's kind of starting to get the game. Like, hey, listen, if I want to make a good living doing this so I can have a good life, I've got to give good interviews and I've got to go out there and look to mess these girls up. And I think that's what she's going to do. I think she's going to go out there looking for blood and trying to finish this fight. I don't think she's going to go out there looking to win a boring decision, which she could easily do. She could win this fight literally just with her jab, in my opinion. I'm pretty sure she could go out there and only use her left hand and only keep the fight standing and win this fight easily with one technique. But she's not going to do that. I think she's going to go out there and maul Nico. I think she's going to piece her up on the feet, take her down at will, ground and pound, look for submissions. I think she's going to finish this fight in the second round, and I'm going to say she's going to do it by TKO because Nico is tough, and I think she does have pretty decent submission defense, but I think she's just going to get pinned down and pounded out or possibly get caught up against the fence, just getting teed off on a little bit. Valentina doesn't tend to like to throw too many combinations, though, so I'd probably lean towards when I say too many combinations, I mean like Dustin Poirier style, your opponent's against the fence and you throw a 16-piece combination. She doesn't really do that. So I think she's more likely to do a ground and pound TKO, but I definitely have Valentina winning this fight easily in the second round. I can't wait to see it. I can't wait for Valentina to be the champion in this division so we can actually have it be a serious division in my mind. I don't really like when they do these Ultimate Fighter, so where they have belts given out at the end, because Nico Montano is not the best flyweight fighter in the world at all. I think that she's not even in the top 3, maybe not even the top 5 of the flyweight fighters in the world. So the fact that she's the champion just makes me kind of annoyed because that's not real. That's just something from a reality show that you did where she beat a late notice replacement and now she's the champion, which doesn't make any sense when you have Valentina Shevchenko in that division, when you have Sijara Eubanks, which it was her fault she didn't get to compete. So maybe I should leave her out of this conversation, but we have Jessica Ai, we have Joanne Calderwood, we have a lot of people that I would pick to beat Nico Montano pretty handily in this division. Let's look at the odds for this fight. Nico Montano is a huge underdog. Plus 931 is as high as you can get her. Valentina Shevchenko, you can find her at minus 2,359. That's crazy. Think about what I said a minute ago about how you can literally step back wrong off a kick and sprain your own ankle and be unable to continue and lose a fight. That's too high. But you can get her at minus 1183. That's the lowest or the highest or whatever you want to say underdog or favorite odds you can get her at. That's nuts. But I agree because Nika Montano, if Nika Montano wins this fight, then I guess I know nothing about MMA. So, yeah, if she wins this fight, I probably will never do another podcast again because clearly I don't know anything I'm talking about. All right, next fight. This is the main event. This is for the welterweight title. This is a big one. This is Tyron Woodley taking on Darren Till. All right, Darren Till, 17-0-1, so 1 draw, 17 wins. Huge welterweight. Tyron Woodley, very, very strong, powerful, and muscular, but I would say a good-sized welterweight. Not huge, not small, good size, perfect size welterweight. I feel like he is a model welterweight. He is 18-3-1. He is a very, very good fighter. I think that Tyron Woodley's best gifts are not his explosiveness or his power. I think they are his brain. I think that Tyron Woodley is an incredibly intelligent person. Has Tyron Woodley annoyed me at times? Yes, he has. I think partly, though, because I really like Stephen Thompson. As I've mentioned in the past, I've met him a few times at local shows in the South Carolina, North Carolina, Tennessee area. Not like I've had long conversations with him, but he was super nice to everyone that said hey to him. He's a very gracious person. And Tyron Woodley kind of rubbed me the wrong way a little bit. I felt like he was kind of insinuating that, Stephen Thompson... I don't know. I don't want to get too much into too many details, but I just kind of felt like, Tyron Woodley feels a lot of times like people do not like him or cheer for him because he is black. And I don't think that's true. Kevin Lee, I don't really like Tyron Woodley that much. He's grown on me a lot lately, I have to say. He really has. I kind of like him now. Didn't really like him for a while, but I love Kevin Lee. I mean, Kevin Lee is an outspoken, brash, young African-American guy. I love him. He's one of my favorite fighters ever, and he's probably my favorite fighter at 155 right now. So, the fact that I'm not a big fan of Tyron Woodley has nothing to do with the color of his skin because you go one weight class down, and my favorite fighter in that weight class is, the exact same race as him, and is just as outspoken as him. It's just the way he goes about being outspoken. I feel like he worries way too much about what other people think about him. And when he was on the Joe Rogan podcast, Joe Rogan said that to him. He was like, "Man, you're successful. Like, you shouldn't really care what all these people say about you or if they don't like you. Like, why do you let it get to you?" And then Tyron will say, "Oh, it doesn't get to me." But then the next second he's talking about what they're saying. So clearly you're reading what they're saying and you're letting it bother you. Whereas I feel like a lot of other people who are in the spotlight kind of ignore that stuff. And I think that's the right way to handle it because you're going to get angry if you're reading all these negative things that people are saying about you. But as I said a second ago, I have to say, Tyron Woodley has really grown on me in the past couple months. I really enjoyed his media lunch scrum before this fight. I felt like he had great things to say. I really felt like he kind of explained his mentality and kind of let me as a fan a little bit in on his thought process, and I enjoyed that. I think he is an incredibly cerebral fighter. I think that his greatest asset is 100% his ability to game plan and stick to the game plan. He never lets the crowd booing force him to do anything stupid. He never lets his opponent trying to trick him. He never lets that work. He's just incredibly intelligent. I don't love watching his fighting style, but I appreciate his fighting style and how smart he is. And he's going to be one of those guys who, when he retires, he's going to be in perfect health. And he's going to be fine when he's older because he has fought smart. He's not going to be, I love a guy like Darren Elkins, but Darren Elkins is not going to be doing well when he's my parents' age. When Darren Elkins is in his early 50s, he's not going to be doing too well. Tyron Woodley's going to be great. He's going to be doing just fine. He's going to be a successful businessman who knows? This guy is so ambitious. By the time he's 50, the dude might have a hip hop label and he might be a movie director. He's got his hand in all sorts of different things. He's a very intelligent guy, very ambitious guy. Just got to respect him. But he does have his hand in a lot of different things, which, Darren Till does not. Darren Till has his hand in one thing, which is training to beat Tyron Woodley. I do think Tyron Woodley is taking this fight incredibly seriously. And just to be honest, I have absolutely no idea who I'm going to pick here. That's probably why I'm talking in circles a little bit. This is a hard fight to pick, y'all. Like I said, Tyron Woodley is very impressive. He's very smart. But he's definitely a burst fighter. He's built like a running back, so he sprints and he recovers, and he sprints and he recovers. Darren Till is a very large man, but his size is spread out. It's not all in his legs like Tyron. He's more, I wouldn't say he's necessarily a marathon style fighter like a Nick Diaz, but he's definitely more of a steady pace guy. And I think that he is very good at using his size. He kind of spreads his frame out, makes himself seem wider. He spreads his arms out and makes it hard for you to maneuver around him, so he can kind of back you into where he wants, which will usually be which is always good for any fighter, to get your opponent kind of along the fence line. Well, what concerns me about that for Tyron is that Tyron already naturally backs himself in to the fence line too much for my liking. So if he has someone who's encouraging him to do that, what's he going to do? Because if he tries to sprint forward, so when he knocked out Jay Heron, he sprinted across the cage while punching and was able to knock him out. That's great, but I think if he does that against Darren Till, he's going to get countered. And I think that if he allows himself to get pushed back against the fence, Darren Till is going to be a lot more aggressive than Stephen Thompson was. Is going to throw more shots and be able to land on Woodley. So here's how Woodley can lose this fight, and then I'm going to tell you how he can win it. The way he can lose this fight is by allowing himself to be backed up behind the black lines against the fence and trying to avoid combinations and punches and kicks from Darren Till and counter back. He doesn't have the reach to do that. He doesn't quite have the striking diversity to do that. He has a good right hand. He's got an okay jab, but he doesn't really use it very much. He's got an okay left hook, but he doesn't really use it that much. Doesn't really have much of a kicking game. So he just won't be able to contend at that range. If Darren Till because think about it, if Tyron Woodley explodes forward, Darren Till has all this real estate to move backwards. But if Darren Till pushes forward, if he throws a stiff jab while stepping forward and then launches a big straight punch behind it, Tyron Woodley can't back up anymore if he's already against the fence. That's my concern, and that's why I think that Tyron Woodley could potentially get knocked out. But here's how Tyron Woodley can win this fight. When someone throws a strike, or more specifically, when someone throws a head strike against Darren Till, he leans his body back. What does that mean for an incredible wrestler like Tyron Woodley? That means that Darren Till's hips are ripe for the picking. Ripe for the picking, I tell you. Darren Till, if you throw a big punch at him and he leans his body back, he is now leaning himself back and leaving his hips exactly where they are. If you can throw punches or even feints or half power punches, so not full power to where you're throwing yourself off balance at all, and get him to lean back and then shoot a takedown, a wrestler and an athlete of Tyron Woodley's caliber can absolutely take Darren Till down in that scenario. And once he has him down, he will most likely be able to control him, use his weight, keep his hips pressed to the mat, control. He might not be able to do a lot of damage because he's going to have to focus on keeping him there, but he can absolutely do that. But Darren Till will still be there if he does that, because that's not going to finish the fight. And I'm not sure. Tyron Woodley doesn't use his wrestling very much. Does he not? He backs up a lot, like I've said, against the fence. Does he do that because he knows he will get too tired? See, there's things that Tyron Woodley knows and his coaches know that we don't know. We don't get to watch him train every day. If he does wrestling every round of this fight, will he be completely exhausted by the fifth round? Is that why he never does that? Or maybe he gets more tired backing up against the fence because he's so tense and anxious. Maybe he actually will be less tired if he wrestles. I don't know. Here's the problem, though. For Tyron Woodley to do that, we have to bank on Tyron Woodley not doing what Tyron Woodley has done in all of his past fights, which is hanging back and allowing the other person to dictate the terms of the fight. I'm not sure if he's going to do that. It worries me. I think that Tyron Woodley has a little bit of a mental block when he gets in there. The reason I say that is because there is no way in my mind that he intended to spend that much time along the fence against Stephen Thompson. I don't care what he says. He had all these great points. He was like, well, I have all this space to sprint forward at him if I'm against the fence because now I've got the whole 30 feet in front of me. Well, you also have 0 feet behind you, so that's not really smart. And Tyron Woodley's a smart guy, so I'm sure he knows that wasn't ideal, and I feel like he couldn't mentally convince himself to stop doing that. I'm afraid that even if he does it for the first round or the second round, that he's not going to be able to continue to actually press forward, get Darren Till to lean back, and shoot a takedown on him and get him down. The other thing is that Darren Till also might know that that's Tyron Woodley's big opening, and he might adjust the way he defends against strikes. He might use, maybe he will try and rather than lean back at all, just counter if Tyron tries to throw anything at his head because of his reach. He could throw a good stiff jab and just try and basically stop. A jab is a great punch because a jab, it also defends you as you're performing an offense. You're also performing defense because when someone's coming in at you and you throw a jab, when your jab lands on them, you are stopping their forward movement because you are, if two cars run into each other, both cars stop, the car that ran into you, it also stops moving because y'all ran into each other. The jab, it's like a jousting, you're throwing that jab forward and you're off balancing what they're doing. So Darren Till might be aware of that. With all this being said, I think I'm going to pick Darren Till in this fight. With one extreme caveat. Is he even going to make weight for this fight? That's the big concern on everyone's mind. And if he does make weight for this fight, if he has to make 170, not 171, 170 on the dot. They are using the beam scales now instead of the digital scales, so that's good. And he might not get messed up with 0.2 pounds or something like Yoel Romero did. But, if he does make 170, is he going to be in good shape the next day? Or is he going to be, and I don't mean good shape as in like fitness, I mean like is he going to be mentally and physically sick from cutting that much weight? We don't know. But if Darren Till can make it through this weight cut, and come out the other side still being the fighter that he is, I think that he'll win this fight. And to be honest, this might actually be the first time I've really wanted Tyron to win a fight. He's just, like I said, that the interviews I've listened of his lately, he's just grown on me. I don't know. I'm just kind of starting to become more of a fan of the guy, but I worry about his ability to consistently provide enough pressure of his own to get Darren Till to make a defensive movement that leaves him open to a takedown. And if Tyron Woodley plays against the fence the whole fight, or even too much of the fight at all, even if he does it for half of each round, he is just leaving himself open to getting caught with big shots. I think Darren Till, I think he can win this fight. I'm not sure if he can finish Tyron or if he's going to win a decision. One scenario I could see, obviously I can see this. I already told y'all I can see the scenario where Tyron gets Darren Till to lean back, shoots takedowns, and controls him for enough of each round as long as he doesn't get tired to win a decision. But I can also see a scenario where Tyron Woodley spends more than half of each round just backing up against the fence before convincing himself to shoot for a takedown. And even if he does get the takedown, if he's getting pieced up against the fence for 3 minutes and then laying on top of Darren Till for 2 minutes, Darren Till will win that round because striking and damage is more important than control in the scorecards. So, that, even the decision kind of for me leans towards Darren Till a little bit because I think that as long as Tyron is not taking him down, that he is not going to be winning this fight. I can also see Darren Till with Tyron Woodley hanging out against the fence, throwing combinations, big body kicks, and clipping Tyron, hurting him, and being able to finish him. I'm not sure which one it's going to be. Tyron has only been knocked out one time in his career, and I believe that's the only time he's been stopped at all, unless there was one way earlier. He was knocked out by Nate Marquardt, who was on steroids in that fight, for what that's worth. But, Tyron, he seems to be able to take a good punch. Darren Till seems to hit pretty hard. And, I think it would be more of an accumulative thing. I really don't know. I can't decide. I'm picking Darren Till. I don't know if I want to say decision or stoppage. You know what? I'm going to say Darren Till by fourth round, KO, TKO. Fourth round. To be honest, that's a little bit random by me. I think part of that's because I think that was when Tyron got stopped by Nate Marquardt. I think it was in the fourth round that he got stopped by Marquardt, so maybe that's part of why I'm thinking that. But I just feel like I feel like Till will definitely still be fresh, by relatively speaking, by the fourth round, and I think Tyron will definitely be a little bit more tired than him just because he carries more muscle. And I think that if Darren Till has been able to stay in the fight for that long, with not just be smothered with wrestling, keep Tyron up against the fence, throw the combinations, I think he can get him out of there. He might end up just getting a decision, but I'm just gonna say it. I'm gonna say fourth round stoppage for Till. Not super confident in it, but what can you do? Let's look at the odds for that fight. Tyron Woodley is a slight favorite. You can get him as high as minus 112. Darren Till is also in the negatives. You can get him at negative or minus 102. So yeah, very close fight. Pick 'em fight. Very hard fight to pick. Man, it's going to be a good one, y'all. All right, so that's my show. Those are my picks. I'm sticking to it. Those are the odds. I didn't make them, but I believe them. And we'll be back after this fight. This fight is obviously, if I didn't say it, it's this Saturday, which I believe is September 8th. I'll be back to do a recap show, probably the Sunday after. And tune in, watch these fights, enjoy them. I can't wait. Going to be a lot of fun. And until then, see you later.